I'm Dawn Janice, and this is my really good friend, Wendy Lee Baldwin Hargett, and we are the hosts of Lightweavings podcast. This is where we discuss the question, what has dimmed your light, and are you ready to do something about that? Some of the topics that we talk about might make some people uncomfortable, and the reason for that is that that's a shift. That's a shift in who we are deciding to be. And the shift is a little bit uncomfortable. And that usually feels uncomfortable, doesn't it, Wendy, right before the breakthrough happens?
Yes, it definitely can feel extremely comfortable and they can try to talk you out of it.
Yes. Yes, because our ego, our lower self really doesn't like change. It feels like change is dangerous. But we know that a lot of change obviously is good, and especially if we are, keeping ourselves contained in some darkness when there's light available. So we want to talk about the light today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was telling Wendy a minute ago that I was at Ross today, just ran in there to buy a scratching pad for my cat, Oreo. You all are familiar with him. And I walked past the women's clothing, and it was the junior section, of course, because that's who I still think I am. And I saw a shirt on the end. It's a really cute little t-shirt, hot pink. Of course, it's Barbie season, so I'm noticing that. And there was the smiley faces on it, the yellow smiley faces. And I'm a 70s girl, so have a nice day is something that I'm very familiar with. And also my son Josh, I feel like that's a message from him every time I see that smiley face, because it just reminds me of him. It's kind of a smile that he had. And the shirt said, "Don't worry, be happy." And I thought, I need to wear that shirt. So I got it for $12. I'm kind of excited
Excellent.
about it. Yeah. And I found the scratching pad. So, but those are pretty intense words. They seem simple, they seem so lighthearted. Don't worry, be happy. But usually the most profound messages come from a short phrase. That's been my experience, Wendy.
Yeah, I agree. Don't worry, be happy. What a great concept to strive for and to live by. And like you said, it sounds really simple. And unfortunately, it's not always that simple to just let go of worry and to just be happy, because we are humans and we have a lot of angst attached to us.
Yes, we do. And we actually have more power in getting rid of those angsts and actually going towards being happy than we realize.
Oh, for sure.
We have power. We have the right to decide. We have free will.
Yes, we do. And unfortunately, we forget that, or we never knew that in the first place because of our old conditioning. And you heard it right here today. You have the power to create your life. You have the power to be happy, whatever that looks like for you. You know, I shared with you briefly that yesterday I was doing some automatic writing and I was asking some questions of my higher self, the universe. And it says, just do what makes you happy. It's
Mhm.
like, what a concept. We're not taught to be happy. We're taught to do what makes somebody else happy. We're taught to do what makes our parents happy, makes our boss happy, makes our neighbor happy, makes our spouse and our children happy. But what about us? What makes us happy? And knowing that you have the right to decide to do whatever it is that makes you happy, that's just such a game changer. And when you step into that, stand into your power and ask yourself, it's really simple. What would make me happy today? I used to, I was connected to this really amazing person through a networking group. And I remember one day he was just talking about, he just made the decision that moving forward, he was only going to do what made him happy. And I thought, what an amazing concept. And it seemed really kind of far out there. But I've come to realize that he got it. Just do what makes you happy.
It's a decision. We get to decide. We get to.
Yeah, we do. And if it's something that, you're not super fond of, let's say for your job, let's say, because a lot of people are stuck in jobs that they don't like, but it's like, how can I be happy in this situation? Because you get to decide how you show up to whatever situation it is.
Absolutely. And you get to decide what's going to influence your mind and your body and your soul every moment of every day. We get to decide, yes, there are surprises that come in. There's conflicts from other individuals that you may end up in the middle of, for sure, but you get to decide how to react. Let's just leave it at that. You get to decide whether to jump in and be angry and loud, to, stomp away, to frown, to not frown. We get to decide how to be and then what to do about it. So we also get to decide what influences our mind and our body. Like I said earlier, we get to decide what's on the television if it's on. We get to decide what books we have available for us or which YouTube video we want to watch. And thank you all for watching this one.
Yes, thank you.
Or what podcast you want to listen to. And thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Who you want in your life that day, what people bring more light into your life and which ones take it away. We get to decide that because we influence each other. And there's a lot of influences that come in to our sphere and into our bubble if we allow it every moment of every day. So it's when we think about it that way, when we actually put a spotlight on that, what makes you happy? And is this thing making you happy? Oh, Spark Joy, the book Spark Joy, Marie Kondo, she asks that question. Does that piece of clothing, does that shirt bring you joy? And you hold it up, you feel it, and you decide. You get to decide. I mean, if a shirt can bring you joy, then, of course, people can bring you joy or not, vice versa. And then you don't have to allow what's the news is saying to steal your joy. You can turn it off.
Yeah.
You can, if you want to watch TV, change the channel to something that does bring you joy. Like I like watching golden retriever videos on YouTube, for example.
I personally like cat videos and wild animal videos.
Cats are hilarious. They're
Yeah.
the most funniest animals on the face of the planet, I swear.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I like what you brought up. It's a really, really important the part about the media and getting to decide the media, the social media. You get to decide who your friends are on Facebook. Are they posting things that are uplifting, are they posting things that bring you down? Are they friends that have the same values as you? And if not, you don't have to be friends with somebody on social media. You get to, if it's somebody that every once in a while posts something, like, scroll past it. It's easy to get sucked into posting your point of view. And I bet you it'd make you a lot happier if you just scrolled on by instead of getting engaged in something that could be a cat fight or.
Isn't it so interesting how all of a sudden, it wasn't all of a sudden, but it seems like it was all of a sudden, Facebook over the years has become sort of a world of its own where we're living in that Facebook world. For those of us that are on Facebook, of course, a lot of younger people are no longer there. They're in other platforms, obviously, and so are some of us that are our age. But for example, I had a girlfriend ask me once when Facebook first started, and it had already happened where we were living in the reality of Facebook, basically. She said, did you say on Facebook that you're in a relationship with this boyfriend that I was seeing at the time? Or she said, are you still in a relationship with, let's just call him, Bob. And I said, yes. And she said, but what is your status on Facebook? Does it say you're in a relationship or does it say that you're not in a relationship? Because that's what people know about you. And I thought, wow, look at the influence that social media platform has on our identity. All of a sudden, how many friends do I have as part of my identity? What does my cover look like? What does my profile picture look like? what does my status information say? That's all of a sudden become a huge part of my identity, and a platform created that. And so we actually get to decide, does that platform get to define me?
Right.
We get to decide that.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example of letting something exterior define who you, yeah, as people perceive you, who you think you are. And because, yeah, people do get really wrapped up in that, and well, not enough people responded to my post, or, so and so must not like me because they haven't responded, or, there's all that. I'll see on Facebook a lot. Well, only if you respond down below, and if you don't, I'm going to delete you as a friend.
Oh, yes.
I
Oh, the
scroll right
forwarding.
past those.
It's
It's
like
like,
the old forwarding emails, but now it's a forwarding post. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I was just like, you know what? If that's how you're basing your friendship, then, you're welcome to delete me. But
It's so interesting how we allow, sort of unconsciously, those things to dictate our happiness. When somebody unfriends me on Facebook, there it's like,
Mhm.
used to be, it doesn't bother me as much anymore, because all of a sudden I realize how dumb it is for me to feel like that.
Mhm.
To get unfriended on Facebook was such a big deal. But
Yeah.
um yeah, they get to decide. And who knows what the reason might be. Who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe they're afraid that, someone will think something about them and whatever. But anyway, we get to decide what comes into our life and to be happy.
Mhm.
It really is a decision. Yes, tragedy happens, heartbreak happens, um, people lose jobs, people get hurt, people die of cancer, people struggle for sure. But we can decide through it all how we're going to be and what we get to feel. Nobody gets to dictate that for us.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. I shared with you before we hit the record button that Saturday night I got word that my biological father died of cancer. And as kids didn't even know that he was sick. And firsthand the grief cycle. You start off in shock, and then you move into anger, and then, there's denial, depression, sadness. Um, I found myself after I got out of shock, I found myself in a lot of anger that I didn't know was there. And when I get into an anger state, it attacks my body. And when my body responds, it's like, okay, I really need to pay attention here. And so I was able to use my tools that I have as a holistic healer to go in and more quickly release some of that. But I got up this morning, and part of it was yesterday. I told you about the automatic writing. The other part of it was this morning. It's like, how do I want to be today? It's like, yeah, this was a big loss, for various reasons. But it's like, do I really want to stay in this state that I was, or what do I want? How do I want to feel? And I just kept asking myself, well, I'll share with you what I did, because maybe this will help somebody. I started my day doing some grounding. And because I woke up in kind of a funk, just to be honest. I haven't been sleeping well the last couple of nights because I've been processing this really heavy news and just lots waves of emotions. And so just feeling really low. And I said, okay, it's like, this isn't how I want to feel. This isn't how I want to be. So I took some time and I grounded myself I like to ground myself into Mother Earth, the heart of Gaia, and just bringing her energy up. And something I've started doing that has been really powerful is I just verbally say, igniting my God, Goddess light that is within me. And I feel that within my chest and my solar plexus, and calling in my higher self, calling in my spirit guides, Mother, Father, God, all that is. And within snap of a finger, instantly, my energy shifted
Mm.
because I raised myself out of that egoic funk, because honestly, all of that pain and suffering is our ego self. and just raise myself out of that. And then all morning, I just asked myself, because I had, another appointment before our appointment, and I have like this massive to-do list of things I need to do around the house, things I need to do to my website, and all this kind of stuff. Like everybody else, you've got like a huge pull in multiple directions. It's like, okay, I know all these things I'm supposed to do, but what would make me really happy?
Mm.
And just gave myself permission to do what made me really happy. And what made me really happy was between appointments, I had a little bit of time to sit down and read.
Nice.
And as I was reading, I actually started getting some downloads
Mhm.
about some things I had been asking about. But it's because I was in that happy state and just letting go of all the unhappiness that, was able to get some clarity and just be happy.
I love it. Just be happy.
Yeah. And it was a choice.
So we talk a lot about being and versus doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing we can really do to make ourselves happy, except that we can be the person that we see ourselves as when we're happy. And one of the things, actually, the doing and the being sort of overlaps in some ways. For example, reading a book, sitting down to read a book that is information that you're bringing in that helps you get those divine downloads, create more happiness in your life. So, we're human beings. We walk, we talk, we, sleep, we wake, we get dressed, and we decide what to do during that day. But first we decide who we're going to be, and then the doing comes after that. So you decided to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you chose a thing, you chose something to do that would facilitate that.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here today. It's just making a choice. First, we decide who we want to be. Wendy wants to be a happy, beautiful woman, a wonderful facilitator, coach, intuitive, and a happy person. She decided what the things that she was going to do today that would facilitate that. And it was to sit down with a book that she wanted to receive from. We get to do that every day with whatever comes our way. We get many, many decisions during the day. We may not even realize it.
Right.
But all day long, we get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And prioritize those things that bring happiness into your life, that bring joy into your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's just small stuff. Something I did yesterday, I asked myself, what would make me really happy right now? Was out running errands, and you know what made me feel really happy? I went down to this little drive-through burger joint and I got myself a chocolate vanilla ice cream swirl.
Ooh, fun.
It's like I usually eat like one a year. This is my second. So it's like, this is making me really happy.
Good.
I'm not judging myself for having dairy. I'm not judging myself for having 5 million calories.
Yeah.
It's like, this is making me really happy.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so true. And that I hear that. And I hear my friend Linda, who passed away young from stomach cancer. And we never know when we're going to leave, but she left early. And when she found out that she was going to be leaving soon, she said to me over the phone, I was driving and we were driving from Arizona to North Dakota. And she said, "You're coming through South Dakota, right? And Deadwood?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Dawn, eat some ice cream. When you go through there, eat the ice cream." And
Wow.
I heard what she was saying. Be happy.
Yeah.
Make a choice. And that was probably something that made her happy, right? And it made you happy.
Yeah.
And but when those little choices come up, remember, we're not here for very long. So just make the choice that's going to bring you joy.
Yeah.
And if it's going to make you miserable, it's not going to bring you joy, but maybe just for a minute. Anyway, that was a big message. So I hear you with that ice cream story. The swirl. And part of it was just like how pretty it was, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, everything matters.
Yes.
Yeah, so we get to decide what facilitates happiness in our life. And I think a big part of that, uh, at least in my life, is who
Mm.
who's hanging out with me.
Yeah.
Who am I influenced by? Um, who do I get to have in my life? Who do I call my surrogate family?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really grateful that we have choices like that. We also get to decide when it's that when people are only in our life for a season and we all of a sudden we see it
Mm-hmm.
that time has ended.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be an ugly thing. It can just be a decision. It's like, okay.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then thank you. Basically, we just say to us, under our breath, basically, thank you for your service. Now I'm going to allow you to leave,
Right. Right. Yeah, that's really powerful in relationships.
Yeah.
Like the husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that kind of dynamic is what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Yes. And we've talked about this before where if we release somebody that we see that the relationship season is over, it frees them up as well. So it's two
mhm.
people that get to be happy, not just one.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be an ugly ending. It can always be pleasant on our end if we want it to be, or,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I do have to say there's been maybe one or two bridges that I have just burned.
And some of them deserve to be burned because
Some
you
of it
don't
feels
want to
good to
go
burn it.
back.
It's like I'm burning that one down. That's going to feel
Right.
good. That's going to bring me joy. So
There you go. Uh,
yeah. So I think this is a big topic for a lot of us out there. Is like, what does bring us joy and what brings happiness into our life? And the shirt that I talked about earlier, don't worry, be happy. So we've talked about the second part of that, be happy.
mhm.
Let's talk about the first part. Don't
Okay.
worry. Let's
Easier
just
said than done.
examine that one a little
Yeah.
bit. So exactly, easier said than done because we're trained to worry. Like you said, the very beginning of this
Yeah.
podcast is that we are trained to constantly worry about the future or the past instead of being present.
Yeah, we're taught that way, and our brains are just kind of wired that way. We worry about our safety. Worry is all about feeling safe or unsafe.
Yeah, and then worrying is the opposite basically of happiness.
Hmm.
It's on the other end of
Hmm.
the color wheel, it's on the other side of the color wheel,
Mm.
basically.
Right,
While we're worrying, we can't possibly be happy and be present.
right.
So, what are some ways that we can make that decision to release worry
Mm.
and be present and make the decision to be happy? We think about some tools that we have in our tool belt, and you and I have many.
Right.
One that comes up for me is what I did this morning, and that was to get out my journal and just decide, okay, and I actually put it in my calendar today. There's a time slot for journaling now in my
Mm.
calendar to actually get down with a pen and just whatever comes to mind. And you talked about free writing.
Hmm.
Journaling for me is some free writing. I may have something that I want to write down to remember,
Hmm.
but after that, then the free writing comes and I allow it to.
Hmm.
And whatever comes up, I write down. Sometimes it seems like the topics jump from one to another, and that's okay. That just says that there's a lot coming in to my world and into my mind
Right.
on a daily basis. But then to write it down and then to read it, to actually read what we write and examine it and then make a decision, okay, that worry or is that something else that's going to lead to happiness for me? And then if it's not leading to happiness, how can I make it lead to happiness? What can I do about this topic, this subject? What can I decide? And then who I'm going to be, and then what do I do after I decide who I'm going to be? It's very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. It's very empowering because when you write out, it's like, how can I handle this situation? That is really empowering. Instead of just kind of going with the way the wind blows in a situation, you're strategizing possibilities of different outcomes, and that's very empowering. It's kind of like practicing like some role playing if you have to have a bad conversation with somebody, so you're like, okay, worst case scenario, all right, this is what I can do to handle it. So yeah, that's beautiful advice.
Yeah. So writing that down is one way to do it. Another way is to decide, like you did today, who or what. I've decided who I'm going to be. So here's what I'm going to do. Read a book.
Hmm.
So then make a choice about what is it you're going to bring in that's going to change that feeling that you have. That works for me.
Yeah, I think that's great. When it comes to worry, you can also ask yourself some questions of your subconscious mind. What's the worst thing that can happen to you? Because that's when you start worrying, that's where you go, is what's the worst case scenario oftentimes, and you might not even realize that. And when you bring voice to what it is that you're really afraid of, that say you might be afraid, it might just on the surface, it might be afraid of, somebody's going to yell at you or something like that. But deep down, what you're really afraid of is you might die,
Mm.
So it could be a lot deeper. And so when you just acknowledge that, it's like, oh, that's how I'm really feeling. That's at the deepest, darkest depths of this worry. And then it's like, okay, whatever the deepest, darkest part is like, is there's a way that you can handle it,
Yeah.
and just knowing what you are really afraid of is so empowering, like you were saying, just so you can go in with some strategy. And oftentimes our worries are so much bigger than the reality of something. Our worries tend to blow the problem up to be bigger than what it is. And so if we can dial that back down, just keep asking yourself, so what's the worst thing that could happen about this? What's the worst thing that can happen about that? And just giving more voice. And then, like you just said, come up with strategies. And it's like, you'll usually find out that the outcome isn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. And if it is, then you were at least as prepared as you could be.
Absolutely. And then Byron Katie has written several books, and she's got a very simple strategy when it comes to worry. And that the first question is it true? And that's basically what you're saying. Like, we make things bigger than they are usually, and probably it's not even true.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Is this true?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
is it true for me? Even takes it
Right.
even further. And doesn't
Right.
have to be. And she even goes further, but she's got some, 3 simple questions about, and, I'll link her book below the video as well. Several of her books. She's got great strategies that were divine downloads for her. So yeah, that's just a simple question. Is it true?
Right. Right. Because if you're going to worst case scenario based on somebody else's experience, then yeah, that's not necessarily true for you. Yes. And I believe what you're talking about, the process is called like the works or something like that. And you can, yeah, that'd be great to link up her books, of course. And there's also some information on her website about that as well. So yeah, it's like you said, it's just some simple questions. And what it's doing is just getting you out of that worst case scenario and into new possibilities. And when you have new possibilities, as we know, when you rewire your brain, getting it out of that rut, then new possibilities can come about.
And what you just said is what we're doing here. We're rewiring our brain.
Yeah.
literally. This
Yeah.
is neuroscience that we're doing here. This is, you know, this is quantum physics. This is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. It can be that simple.
Yeah.
It can be that simple just to rewire your neural pathways in your brain.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
it true? In fact, I know that that's happened with me. Once I've brought in information that brings me joy, I know I can, those pathways are sort of dug in to my brain now. So I go there. I go
Hmm.
to those places that I already know, because once we hear something, once we know something, we can't unknow it.
That's right.
It's there.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that I know is a huge issue in my life is, and it's just because I've done some work on this, is safety.
Mm.
Ever since I was a little girl, there's a safety factor. Is it safe? Some things don't feel safe to me
Hmm.
because of probably childhood traumas, small traumas.
Exactly.
And usually if I look at a worry that has something to do with safety.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. This does start in our childhood. We have to physically and in our nervous system have to feel safe.
Mm.
And it's one of the pillars of actually having really good health and being happy is to feel that safety. That's something that I learned early on in my holistic healing journey is the body has to feel safe. The nervous system has to feel safe.
That is the basics of Maslow's hierarchy too, is the first thing is safety. It's like
Mhm.
basic needs, and it's safety.
Mhm.
And it's our base. It's our, kind of connected with the chakras. And when you look at the hierarchy and the chakras, they're very similar.
Mm.
It's like that, being grounded and safe, like
Mhm.
knowing that you are safe in this world. It's okay that you exist.
Mhm. Right.
It's more than okay. It's wonderful that you exist. And that is
Yes.
a huge part of the safety thing for me, is like it's good that I exist and I am who I am and all that I am.
Yes.
And I am enough. That's
Yes, you are.
that's part of the safety factor. It's just
Yeah.
knowing that you are enough, that you don't have to constantly worry about being more than you are, because we all have everything that we need and want within us already.
Yes. Yeah, so well said. So well said. It's all inside of us. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are in the habit of going outside of ourselves for the answer when we get to turn the lens inside and get what you need.
Mhm. And once again, that's something that we learn as we go. Some of you may be hearing this for the first time,
Mhm.
but once you know it, you can't unknow it. Is that you are enough. Everything that you need or want is within your grasp, and you already know how to get it. It's the answers in the room. We say at the Thought Leadership Academy, and that's a group that I'm in, but the answer is within you.
Mhm.
And happiness is a decision within you.
Yeah.
And I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't, I would never, be one to talk about depression or anxiety or any of those clinical words. But I am a human being that's been on this earth for 63 years, and worked in this field for a while as a coach. And I have learned that with my experience. That's been my experience in life, is that everything is within our reach.
Yeah.
We get to decide to choose happiness or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And it reminds me of this lady that I worked with for a while. I actually met her at a networking group and I was giving a brief presentation. And I was just showing people how easy it is to go back in time, to heal the past. And I just said, just walked me through the process. And I said, go back to an early childhood memory when you were happy.
Mm.
And this lady approached me later. She goes, I have no happy memories from my childhood. And I just want to say to anybody, if you feel that way, that you have no happy memories from your childhood, It's not an excuse to stop you from being happy moving forward, because you have the power to make the choice that, okay, yes, the past was unhappy, and unhappiness just begets more unhappiness. So you get to decide, you get to choose today. Even if you don't even know what happiness feels like, you can say, I want to, you can pretend,
And rewrite the
imagine.
story. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Pretend. I love that. I was just thinking that, Wendy, that's beautiful. And it's sad, it's tragic that there are people that have no happiness that they can recall from their childhood. And I think a lot of that is that we don't remember everything because we are not being present. We're either thinking about the recent past or the, soon to be future as a child. That way we are not present, so we don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of people have tragic childhoods. That's no question. And I have a lot of empathy for people that have had really tragic childhoods. Wouldn't say that mine was tragic, but I don't remember a lot of my childhood either because I
Mm-hmm.
think there was a lot of worrying about the past or the future
Mm-hmm.
happening. But I love that idea that you just came up with, to imagine being a happy child, just picturing yourself. I'll go to the mirror and picture little Dawn, and in a scenario that I do recall, but I don't really recall everything that happened around it, and then just rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
You create a narrow pathway with a rewritten story, and even
Mm-hmm.
just writing it down, like journaling, that would be a fun way to do that. But just making a decision about, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is how I was happy and how I can be happy. And that'd be a fun
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah. And just really allow yourself to feel that, bring that energy into your body, and if you find yourself saying, well, I don't really know what happy feels like. Well, have you ever laughed at a joke?
There you go.
Go back to what that felt like.
Go watch a golden retriever video or a cat video.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever seen a baby be born? Have you ever held a newborn baby? There's all kinds of things. Have you ever eaten an ice cream cone? you know.
There you go. It's a chocolate and vanilla swirl.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, another thing that makes me happy, I just have to say this. It's puppy breath. I think it's
Oh,
bottled.
you can have it. No, thank you.
Oh
Uh,
boy. Well, I guess on that note, we can probably wrap up this session on don't worry, be happy, the message of the day. But I do want to thank you, Wendy, for all of your insight. And I love the idea of rewriting your childhood story. I just think that's a beautiful exercise to create a new neural pathway. Is there any other amazing words of wisdom that you have for me and the rest of us that are out there listening today?
I think that we did a really good job of covering it today. I guess just remember, maybe the next time you're not feeling happy, just ask yourself, is this how I really want to feel, or would I rather feel even just a little bit more joy? It's too much to expect yourself to go from, say, depression to ecstasy. That's just not realistic. Our nervous system isn't designed for that. But I love what Esther Hicks talks about with her channelings from Abraham, is just to pivot like one vibrational feeling up higher and higher on the emotional scale. And pretty soon you will start to feel that happiness. So you don't want to put pressure on yourself to feel happy, like, oh, dang it, I can't do this right. I can't even be happy right. You don't want to be doing that. You want to just, like, yeah, I feel a little bit better today, a little bit better today, and just keep inviting that little bit better feeling in, and it'll grow and it'll grow.
That's an excellent point. It may seem impossible that you can be happy, but one small thing at a time, the
Hmm.
pivot. I think
Yeah.
that's a great point, Wendy. Thank you for that. It's so beautiful. Well, we are Lightweavings podcast. Wendy and I just get together and we just start talking, and then you get to listen to us. So thank you
Yeah.
for being a part of our podcast today and watching us on YouTube. This is where we ask that question, what has dimmed your light? And are you ready to do something about it, such as pivoting and just beginning that journey towards happiness? And we know that sometimes some parts of our conversations might make some uncomfortable, but just know that that's where that pivot is starting right there. So you can reach us. We are going to be putting our contact information below the video and below the podcast description. And we invite you to reach out and do share this with somebody that you think may be interested in listening to it. We really appreciate it. And please subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, we ask that you subscribe to our YouTube video and to our podcast. It helps us help others. So thank you, Wendy, for showing up with me today.
Thank you, Dawn. It's always a privilege. It's always an honor. And thank you for everybody that is listening and watching, and wishing you all the best.
All right. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.